What's going on, peeps? It's Wrath here, hanging out today, playing some Idle Heroes. I want to thank you guys so much for coming out with me today. If you liked the video, don't forget, smash that thumbs up button and show your support. And if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe as well. Alright guys, we're here today on the official servers because it's reset day, which means we're going to talk about stuff. That's what we do. So here we are. Bam, new events, new stuff. Before we jump into things, I guess we're kind of jumping into them now, but whatever. Desert College, pretty much over. I've got 2 little cakes left. I may or may not have spended like, I think it was 80 bucks. Not, maybe it was 70. Maybe it was 70 bucks. I had to buy 2 offers, I know that much, to get my Valkyrie copy. I know, I'm a horrible person, but I'm honest. I'm an honest guy. I had to spend a little money because I was a little more lazy with my collections. Some people actually managed to get Valkyrie for free. I've seen some people even get over 300 cakes as free to play. It was possible, it's just there's a lot of RNG that goes into that, and you have to make sure that you are collecting your loot before 8 hours, literally every time, never missing a minute. So, some people got that done. Props to you if you did. Very good job. I was a little lazier. I ended with like 2,400 cakes, so I had to buy a few. It happens. Whatevs. With that said, with that done, new stuff. Obviously, Heroic Summon event based on the value packages. Bam, bam, bam. Summon packages. New hero. We'll talk about him in a second. Cthugha. Cthugha. Sounds good. Sounds good. Anyways, summon package. Nothing really crazy about it here are the summon prizes. Pretty much what they normally are. Your first couple hundred points are going to get you 30 free scrolls. Not really free, but you know, 30 scroll reimbursement, I guess you would say. Plus, you're going to end up with about 15 profit orbs. Doing the 300 of them, right? That seems right. Nope, we got more than that. What? No, that's 6, 10, 15. I'm right. Math is right in my head. 15 profit orbs, 30 heroic summons, 5 of the soul symbols if you're going to replace a hero. Those are kind of handy. Obviously, at 400 points, you get the new hero, Cthugha. And at 500, you get 15 glorious relics, which are incredibly handy to have. And it's kind of nice to get those. They're really useful. But before we go further, bear in mind, normally about 2 times a year, maybe sometimes more, there are big events on Idle Heroes. For example, back in July, the anniversary event. Big event here on Idle Heroes. And the summon prize there was 700 points, but there was a light and a dark unit available. Christmas time usually has a similar big event. Normally. It doesn't mean it always happens. I would assume that it will, though. So it might be worth saving your heroic summons, skipping events on the way to it to make sure you've got enough scrolls to deal with the Christmas event. That's just, I want to put that out there in case you don't know about that so that you can keep that in your mind. Some people, maybe you don't give a crap about the light and dark heroes that may show up, and you say, you know what, I want Cthugha. If you want Cthugha, now is the time to spend your scrolls because you have an increased chance to get him. If you're not super worried about Cthugha and you're like, I want to save up for the future events, then you should be saving. Just keep that in mind, peeps. But that's the summon prizes. Hero exchange is also going on. Skerei and Valentino are the rewards there. They both cost the exact same in the altar shop. We'll talk about those dudes here in a second. And then the Grey Dwarf's Blessing is back already, which is actually kind of a bad thing because I'm super broke. I'm still broke from the last time it came around. It eats up your gold so quickly. But if you guys don't know about the Grey Dwarf's Blessing, essentially, normally it requires 3 sets of a piece of gear, or 3 different pieces of gear, like here, to fuse up 1 piece of the higher tier gear. When the Grey Dwarf's Blessing comes around, takes away 2 of those pieces of gear from each piece and allows you to substitute in gold and gems to fuse up a higher tier set of armor. So you can take 1 full set of 4-star gear and convert it to 1 full set of 5-star gear instead of needing 3 full sets of 4-star gear. But you're going to set yourself back 40 million gold and 1,500 gems. Still not a bad deal for newer players. This can be an absolutely fantastic way to get a really solid set of gear really early in the game, which does make a big difference. Down here, the 5-star set is going to be the same thing, a 5-star to a 6-star set. But, bam, the last node here is going to be 6-star set to specific 6-star set, which means either priest gear, ranger gear, warrior gear, assassin gear, or the mage gear. Obviously, depending on what hero you use the most or rely on the most, generally should dictate which startup set of 6-star gear you get. For me, I have an E3 Vesa. It's my only E3 unit. So for me to go and get assassin gear would have been kind of stupid because I don't have an E3 assassin. So my first 6-star set was preset. obviously, to make my Vesa stronger. I assume this time I'm going to gun for the Ranger suit. I should be able to get it as long as I can kill my Broken Spaces boss here. I've got it low, but I get about 1% to 2% per ticket, so I should be able to get it. I might have to spend a few gems on tickets to make sure I can actually get my 90 million gold out. If I can get that 90 million gold, then I should be ready here for the Grey Dwarf's Blessing to snag out that Ranger gear set. Why Ranger gear, you might ask? That's because I'm obviously going to be building Valkyrie in the future. Gonna have to swap Gru out for, boom, get my 10-star Valk, and then upgrade my Valk to E3 that way. I'm still one copy short, but I do have enough glorious relics to actually buy one. I don't know if I want to do that yet or save up and buy the runes power. Artifacts or heroes, it's a debate. It's a debate! But anyways, it's not important. Let's talk about the heroes. Okay, so first up, I guess we'll talk about the Big Daddy new hero. That makes sense. And then we'll talk about the other two on offer here, Skerei and Valentino. So let's jump into the Abyss area. Bam! You like those sound effects? Pretty good. Alright, so we got Cthugha. Cthugha here looks like Valentino and Karim somehow had an evil demon child. So that's pretty much what he looks like. 100%, that is exactly what Cthugha is. He's Karim and Valentino's love child, which is strange that they pulled that off, but they did. Handsome feller. Handsome feller for a demon. Obviously, few leg days missed. Humongous hands. That's just odd, but he's got them. He's absolutely got them. So you're probably more interested in what he does. Makes sense. So he is a ranger. I don't know if he looks like a ranger, but do any of the rangers look like rangers? No, they do not. Very much no. Anyways, active skill. 236% of his attack as damage is going to hit 3 random enemies, detonates all burning and bleeding debuffs on targets to instantly deal 120% of the total remaining dot damage. That's actually pretty strong. It's actually really strong. Up to a maximum detonating of 1,000% of his attack, which is a lot. 1,000% is a pretty decent number, especially if you get your Cthugha up to 150k attack. That's going to be a pretty big damage drop. However, I don't know what however was. It just seems pretty solid. There's no however there. It seems pretty good. I'd be curious to see how he pairs with someone like Shia, who has a really heavy bleed dot. Go ahead and detonating that instantly could be pretty nasty. Really, any hero that has a damage over time effect, he'll do pretty decent with. However, I've seen some people already saying, oh, Deathsworn. Deathsworn's the best now because he has 15 rounds of burn. No. 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 That dot's going to be a super low dot because the unit that's using it. Deathsworn has no attacks, so it's going to be a super low dot. Detonating early will be okay, woo, we did 200,000 damage. Not super great. So obviously you'll need a stronger hero to set those burns up. Things like Valkyrie, who already have a burn dot and stuff like that, kind of interesting. Even someone like Dragon Slayer might be usable now, which would be kind of interesting to see. But it'd be kind of weird to see a hero that actually detonates dot effects. We haven't had that before, so that's going to be kind of fun to see how that plays in. First passive, kind of a normal passive, just attack HP, but it does make him immune to burning and bleeding, which means he does kind of counter Shia to an extent, but not necessarily all that well, because Shia is going to be a Fortress faction hero who nukes incredibly hard even without her dots. So even though he does dodge her bleed, she still is going to hit him pretty freaking hard. So not going to be a heavy counter to that, but he probably will counter things like Valkyrie decently well because he can't be burned or bled, and he's going to proc burn and bleed on the enemies, which is kind of nice. The second passive here, when he takes damage, he's going to deal 25% of his attack as burn damage and 25% attack as bleeding damage against 3 random enemies for 3 rounds. That's not bad. Essentially, if you have this guy in the 1 slot, or even if he's just in the back team, as he gets hit by anything, he's going to start putting dots on the enemies, which is great because he can detonate those dots himself. But also it pairs incredibly well into his last passive. When he takes damage from a burning target, he gains 15 energy. When he takes damage from a bleeding target, he heals himself for 30% of attack as HP. This is pretty good, being as every time he's hit, he's going to burn and bleed somebody. So he's pretty much going to be stacking debuffs on enemies all the time as he gets hit. When they decide to hit him again, he's either going to gain energy for an active skill proc, or he's going to gain health. And since he does both bleed and burn, he's going to get both of those things. It's just pretty much guaranteed, which is kind of nice. All right? If you just have someone who's just burnt or just bled, he only gets one of those, but as he does both, he's going to get both of those things back, which triggers into his active skill, which will detonate those effects to do even more damage. So he seems like a pretty solid dude. However, as a new unit, I never like to say yes build or no don't build because you don't really know how they fit into the meta, especially on your servers. They may be very different. Your server may not have a lot of Valkyries on it. If it doesn't, he may work a little less good than he will on a server full of Skereis or something. I don't know. It's just, Does he seem solid? Yes. On paper, Cthugha sounds pretty good. However, I don't ever guarantee you guys a build or anything on a new unit because you don't really know. That's what whales are for. This is the reason I love whale spenders, is because those whale spenders are going to have this guy to E3 incredibly quick, and I can absolutely see how he works in battle before I decide to build him as a free-to-play or a light spender, whichever case you fall under. It's kind of nice to let really, heavy spenders test those units out for you, and then if they're not that great, you're like, well, at least I didn't spend money on it. But if it's really good, then you know and you can start building them yourself. So I would say he does look really good, not just for PvP, but also for PvE. I mean, bursting dots is be pretty powerful when you fight a boss who's constantly getting dots put on it. Because normally if you're fighting a boss team, you have a team built for damage over time on you. Bloodblades, Walters, Shia, stuff like that. You're going to have some kind of dot effect on the boss. So this guy's going to pair pretty well with that, I would say. I would say he's going to do pretty good boss damage, but also he has nice survivability, plus pretty much almost a constant energy artifact on when he gets hit, which isn't bad for anything. In PvP, like I said, I'm not a god of PvP or anything. I don't ever claim to be. He is slow. He has no crowd control immunity, which doesn't necessarily lend itself super great to PvP, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. He does counter certain things like Valkyrie. I don't know how well he's going to do in PvP. It just seems like not a ton of people rely on dot damage in PvP. Mainly the dots Cthugha would be bursting in PvP would be probably Valkyries, Shias, and his own, which wouldn't be bad. I'm assuming that can still drop some decent damage. But like I said, being really slow doesn't necessarily help him a lot. It does make him easy to crowd control and to stun lock. And if you don't use a lot of dots in your team, if you don't have Valkyrie, if you don't have Shia, Cthugha's probably not going to do a ton for you damage-wise. I just don't feel like he will. I could be wrong there. Like I said, he's a new unit, so we don't know. But I don't know if he'll be as great in PvP as people thought he was going to be. He seems like a really solid PvE unit, though. And I mean that in like every sense of PvE, like the tower. I don't know about the aspen. Still probably the aspen, even, being as he does have a form of self-sustain pretty much guaranteed. It's not bad. It's not bad. I think he'll work pretty well there. However, we'll get him out of the way. All right, Cthugha, think of him what you want to think of him. I think he's probably going to lend himself better to PvE damage than PvP damage, but I could be surprised, and he might work really well in both. Like our next candidate on the list, Skerei. Perfect segue. On official servers, Skerei is heavily used, at least on mine. Okay, every server is different. Keep that in mind. Official servers do not all follow the same meta. Some servers built certain units more than others, so that unit becomes the meta, and countering it becomes the meta. It kind of changes the whole server up. On my server, on official S10, Skerei is used pretty heavily, because he's a very solid unit in both PvE and PvP. The main thing about Skerei is anytime, well, we'll read through it. His active skill increases the damage of his active skill, essentially. What he does when he drops his active skill, he tags enemies with a mark. That mark boosts the damage that they take from Skerei's active skill. That's not it, though. He also does that on his basic attack. He's going to tag him with lightning mark, and when he's hit, he tags with lightning mark. So anytime Skerei is hit or attacking, he's putting lightning marks on the enemy. As he stacks those up higher, his active skill does more and more damage, and you see Skerei single-handedly nuke down teams all the time in PvP on my server. It happens. Even if you manage to crowd control this guy all the way up till wave 11, if he gets uncrowd controlled for a second and gets his active skill off, he will one-shot your team. It happens all the time. I see it a lot. That's why he's used a lot in high-end PvP on my server. Pretty solid dude. He also has natural reduced damage and crit. The reduced damage is fantastic because it means obviously he's going to stay alive longer, and that's what you really want from Skerei. If he's alive for a longer period of time, he's going to stack more marks up, which means he's more likely to get that active skill off. If he gets that active skill off with lots of marks, it's pretty much game over. Which is nice. It's just nice. He also has an attack steal on his basic attack. If you ever fought this guy in the Tower of Oblivion when there's 6 of them, you realize how annoying that is, because it makes your team hit like little, beep, 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 barely touching the guy, and then he's going to drop these huge active skills and kind of just poop on your team. It's pretty handy. In PvE, he's not so great by himself, and that's something you got to keep in mind. An E3 Skerei by himself in PvE might be pretty decent, But A, you need a Heart Watcher still for PvE, guaranteed, even if you're using Skerei. But if you have a second Skerei, these marks will stack between them, and that is where he gets really crazy, and you see Skerei dropping over 1 billion damage in PvE. It's because he's getting double the mark stacked up. I've seen people drop over 2 billion damage with a double Skerei team in PvE. It is doable, it is crazy, but you also have to have 14 Skerei copies to pull that off. I don't have that. I don't have that even close. But a very solid unit for PvE and PvP. If you're one of those hybridized players, this guy is almost a guaranteed must-have because you're going to do well in both, and that's nice. With that said, the other one on the list here is going to be, bam, Valentino. Now, I've heard people tell me Valentino's good in PvE. I never saw it. Does he do okay in PvE? Sure, but when I talk about PvE, I mainly mean boss damage, because rarely do you see somebody say, I'm building for PvE, but they're building their entire team for the Tower of Oblivion. You just don't see it very often, because it's not really an important part of the game. It's like a side quest, in my opinion. Most people go for boss damage units when they build for PvE. Valentino is not an amazing boss damage unit. Can he put out some damage? Yes. Valentino is primarily a PvP hero, though. He revolves around crowd control, with some decent damage behind the crowd control, which isn't bad, but he also gives your entire team a chance to crowd control. Both of these things are useless against bosses. You don't need crowd control versus a boss. It never works. You don't need it. So he's mainly PvP based. Does work a little in PvE. I'm not going to say you can't use him in boss fights. You can. You're just not going to get as good as damage if you used an actual boss-based hero. But pretty nice. He's immune to stun, which also lends itself nice to PvP. But in terms of PvE, like the Tower of Oblivion, Valentino is going to work very well in the Tower of Oblivion because it scales well with crowd control. It's one of those areas in PvE that actually kind of benefits from PvP-based heroes. Valentino works really nice there. The last passive here boosts his reduced damage by 50% for 5 rounds when he falls below 80% health, which can make Valentino very tanky. Once he gets below 80% HP, he starts taking much less damage, so it's kind of hard to nuke him to death. Pretty solid unit. I don't see him a ton on this server. Mainly probably people didn't build him, but he is definitely solid. He might be in the top, I don't know. But yeah, that's the 3 units you can get. None of them I would say are bad units. They're just good in different areas. Cthugha seems to me mainly PvE based, at least from his skill kit, that's what I'm gathering. I mean, he's bursting dots left and right. That seems to me like it's going to work well in boss fights where you're putting dots on left and right. In PvP, I can see it working. I don't know. I'm not a super PvP-oriented guy. That's more for the whales. I'm not a whales. So that's for them. I'll let them test him out and see how he works in PvP. I still think he work all right in PvE. Skerei, good hybrid unit, works in both. Valentino can work in both, but I'd say he's primarily a PvP unit. I guess we can look. We can look in our arena and see what people are running in the top 3. Oh, Evo Sky, what's he got? He's got holy freaking balls, man. He's working on his 3rd E3 Skerei. Like I said, very solid in PvP. He's pooping on people with that team. I guarantee it. That's why he's number 1. Wow, that's disgusting. That is absolutely disgusting. He's got a Valentino in his top team. Makes sense. Valentino in his top team. You get what I'm saying? Valentino up there and Skerei. As you can see, in my official server, both of those units are very top-tier PvP units. So like I said, if your server doesn't have all that, it may be different. You might have a different official server. It does happen. There are different metas on different servers. But on this one, 2 very solid late-game PvP units available right now, which is good. Absolutely a good deal. With that said, that's pretty much the entire event laid out. We've got it all pretty much all talked about. All the heroes discussed. Talked about saving for the future events in case you want to get those done instead. I will be saving. I've only got 250 scrolls, so I can't complete this anyway. Even if Cthugha does seem pretty good, Wrath can't afford him. So for now, he's going to be on the back burner. We'll wait on that. But that's going to be it for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. If you liked the video, please make sure, smash that thumbs up button to show your support. If you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe as well. And tell your friends about it, because that definitely helps me out a lot. And I will see you guys in the next one.